Retention is one of the most important things to think about if you want to make viral content, but there's not a lot of known about retention and how to optimize for it. So here are 5 underrated retention techniques that you can use to make your videos better. And these techniques are used by top creators all the time. Let's get into it. So the first technique is to use maps in order to help the viewer understand the structure of the video and help them understand where they are in your video. When you make a video, you can have your video in terms of segments, right? You get your intro, you get your segment 1. Whether that's maybe the beginning of your story or your tip number 1. Then you have segment number 2, then you have segment number 3, etc, etc. Now, what is often done is that we get the intro, we get to your first segment, and after this one here, you have a little bit of a map asset. This could be a roadmap. So let's say this is a video, $1 steak versus $10,000 steak. In that case, what you can have is you have 6 squares that show that after the first segment, you have done your $1 one right here. It check marks it off, and now you go to your $100 one. And this allows the viewer to then see where they are in our journey. And I'm going to explain why this is so good for retention. Because in reality, what this does is it creates a sense of control for the viewer. And this is known to increase satisfaction. Here's a little experiment that was done back in the days to show and prove my point here. And that helps you understand why it's so important to have this structural clarity for the viewer. And structural clarity is simply the element of understanding how the structure is and where we are. So in one experiment, they took a lot of train riders. They put them on a journey from point A to point B. Now in the first group, there was nothing. It was just a plain train, and then they would measure satisfaction. Now in the second group of train riders, they added one extra thing here. They added this little screen that they could look at to help them understand where they are in their journey, to allow them to track the stops. And it's not just that they know which stops there are, it's really that you give the viewer or the person experiencing the experience here is getting a sense of control over their time and a good understanding of where they are in the structure, how much have they done, etc. And what they notice is that satisfaction went up. And there's always 3 things that we need very good when it comes down to retention. Is 1, we want high in interest. We want to make sure that people are able to stay interested. We need to make sure that the video is an engaging experience. And then lastly, we want satisfaction. Because if people feel satisfied or their satisfaction goes up, they're likely to watch for longer, or the next time they watch your video to also watch that one for longer. So giving structural clarity through these type of maps is a really great thing. The second underrated technique that people don't think about is when you place your jokes and when you progress towards the goal of your video. So in our videos, we often have the beginning of our video and then we have a set defined goal or a direction that we want to head towards. And typically what happens with retention is that every single scene that progresses towards that goal is a scene that does pretty good in terms of retention. Whenever we feel like at the beginning of that scene and the end of the scene, we have generally taken a step forward towards our goal, people really like that. It gives them a sense of progression, and that adds to them more likely to keep on watching. But whenever we stall progression, such as whenever we're doing a lot of comedic jokes and stuff, that's the time that we typically lose retention. And it's not because people don't like the joke, it's just because these segments might take too long for them to progress towards the goal. So here's a little technique that you can do. Avoid making multiple jokes in a row and mix them between segments of progression. And this gives this nice balance between progression and changing the tone into something comedic and giving the people something extra, something more fun to watch. Now, one thing that I would say here though is avoid a very predictable pattern of progression joke, progression joke, progression joke, because this may still be too many jokes. So often you definitely want enough progression each time so that the viewer doesn't feel like it's taking too much time always, and every single time the immersion gets interrupted by some jokes and stuff. So never do 2 jokes in a row because it may stall progression for too long for the viewer. And this matters for both educational content as well as entertainment content. And I know entertainment content lives off comedy, but still progression towards the goal is the #1 driver of retention. Number 3, and this one will mainly apply to entertainment channels, but if you're an educational channel and you have a story involved in your tips, then this could also apply to you. This is related to what makes a story really come to life. And this is often not talked about, but there is a 4th element. So what we know is typically when we set up a story, we want to establish 3 main things. We want to establish what do we want. For example, I want to eat 100 chicken nuggets in 1 hour. That's the base of our story. And the second element is why do we want to do that? This is very important because if there's no strong why, the viewer doesn't understand the reason behind all the actions and doesn't understand the motivation to go through struggle in order to get to our journey. So why do we want that? Because we made a bet with a friend and the friend didn't believe it, so I'm trying to prove my friend wrong. I'm trying to prove that I can do this. And the third element of a great story that needs to be set up, what are the obstacles? We know what do we want, want, why do we want it, and what are the obstacles. In this case, well, we only got 1 hour. The hour is kind of the obstacle. The time limit is the obstacle that we are trying to overcome here. And maybe we could argue that there's more obstacles. Maybe the obstacle is we don't have water, right? So we need to think about technique. Or the obstacle maybe is like, okay, how am I going to make this easier for myself? So that's fairly easy. So if you set up story, whether it's an entertainment content or educational content, think about these 3 elements. This is the most underrated and forgotten about. This seems fine as a journey, but it doesn't really drive home until you add that 4th element here. And that 4th element is a negative consequence. The negative consequence is, what if we don't reach our goal, what do we lose? Because we could gain something. For example, like, hey, if I have this bet, my friend will believe me and I have won his respect, for example. But okay, we need something on the other side of things, negative consequence. Well, if we don't make it, we have to give our friend $100, for example. Maybe we can make it more extreme. Like, our friend actually loses respect because he believed that we're a man of our word and now we can't do it suddenly, so we lose some respect. And once we establish this negative consequence, that's really when the story starts to drive home, because we know that doing good in our story has a positive outcome. Before, if doing bad is like, it's whatever. Are we truly motivated to get this? Not really. Well, so if we add a negative consequence here, like let's say you lose $100, well, in that case, it's like winning is good, losing is actually extra bad. If you think about a good story that makes us easy to immerse ourselves into, or make the viewer truly feel for the protagonist or the main person going through this story, add a negative consequence. And doing that one will often improve retention because it makes the story come so much more to life. And if you're often wondering, hey, isn't retention the opposite of storytelling? Retention is optimizing your stories for making people more engaged and watching them for longer. Retention is the optimization of storytelling, not the opposite of storytelling. The 4th underrated technique is to add an unexpected direction. So when we look at any type of video, if we feel like things are going in an unexpected direction, so for example, if I say, hey, for an educational channel, there's 5 tips that will improve your running. The first one is like, okay, you gotta drink water. Then the next one is put in your 5,000 steps. Then the next one is whatever. What's happening here is that you're starting to take a predictable pattern. And when things are predictable and viewers can kind of sense where things are going, then they start to lose interest because there's nothing mentally challenging or mentally exciting for them to discover. So what we often try to do, whether it's educational like this, or maybe it's a story where we are eating these chicken nuggets that I was mentioning earlier, right? If at the beginning, right, we already ate 50 in the first 20 minutes, it's kind of certain that we're going to reach our goal. So in that case, adding an unexpected direction can drastically change how interesting your videos are or how people are enjoying your videos. So in the educational example here, it's like, okay, let's say we have, okay, we drink water, we put another 5,000 steps. The next one is eat more white chocolate, for example. The idea here is that nobody's going to expect that to be here. So once it happens and it takes an unexpected turn, people are more likely to pay attention because you're taking an interesting turn, a newer turn, a turn they weren't expecting. This is something to know about the brain, is that whenever our brains detect change in the story or change in the direction, your brain starts to get like, ooh, this is interesting. I need to pay extra attention. What is happening here? Unexpected change, our brain really loves it. The same thing in the entertainment content you have as well here. Let's say you already ate 50 nuggets after 20 minutes. So it's kind of certain that you're going to eat 100 nuggets in this full hour or 60 minutes. So here, let's add a little unexpected direction. What if from now on the kitchen broke down? The nuggets are all overcooked. Well, now this seems to become a challenge because there's a challenge of the taste. Or let's say the kitchen broke down on, they cannot make more nuggets. So now we have to actually travel to another restaurant that makes nuggets so that we can eat those and still complete our challenge. And that is not a direction that anybody expected from our story. So the viewer will start to be more interested because obstacles start to arise. And again, unexpected direction. By the way, quickly before we go to the next one, I want to quickly mention the Million View Club, linked in the description. It's a platform that we've built with a lot of this knowledge there, and it's a lot more comprehensive and kind of in the style that we're doing right now using a whiteboard. So head over to millionviewclub.com or link in the description. And the last underrated retention tip is what it actually takes to create a sense of urgency. What often happens is people add these timers, like I have 8 minutes to do something. But 8 minutes by itself doesn't create a sense of urgency. It could not. Sometimes people say I have 24 hours. Sometimes people say I have 10 days. So which of these actually creates a sense of urgency? So in order to create a sense of urgency, there's 3 elements that need to be present for the viewer to really feel the sense of urgency. So the first one is a time limit. If we do not have a time limit, then it's very difficult to create a sense of urgency. It can be 8 minutes, but it doesn't have to be that one. Let's say you and somebody are having a competition right here, And here's the end line. This person already being halfway while you are here is also a perceived time limit here, because it's only so much time before they reach the end destination. And if you didn't get there before this person did, then you lose. Time limits, or a feeling like there's a limit of time, like precise time or just a sense of time limit, that's absolutely necessary. Without this one, we don't get a sense of urgency here. Some people could say that, hey, 100 tries creates a sense of urgency as well, right? It really depends. If we have, for example, 100 tries and now I have 3 tries left, sure, there is a limited amount of tries, but that's not really a sense of urgency. That creates a sense of tension, and it all comes down to these last things that induces stress and stuff, which is good by itself. But again, if you want to create a sense of urgency and make sense of these timers, create a time limit. The next thing is that time limit needs to be perceived as a low amount of time. Let's go back to the example earlier. If I have 60 minutes here to eat 100 nuggets, that by itself could be perceived as very low time for 100 nuggets. So that creates a sense of urgency right off the beginning. But let's say we have 24 hours now suddenly to finish these 100 nuggets. At the beginning, there will not be urgency to carry retention. So we don't want to rely on that in order to carry retention. That's the reason why often what you see is first hours, they go past so fast, and most of the video is all about, okay, there's 2 hours left. And then the video seems to slow down, because when there's 2 hours left and let's say there's still 50 nuggets, well, guess what? We perceive as, okay, I don't think this is possible. So now there's a sense of urgency again. So think about, we want to make sure that the amount of time left is perceived as very low. Time limit is important, but we need to perceive it as low in order to really create a sense of urgency that is able to carry retention. And the last thing is that a sense of urgency only is possible when there's something at stake. Is it something that we're trying to achieve and something that we want to win? Maybe it's $1 million if we eat these 100 nuggets. And if we get it in time, then guess what? We get the $1 million. Or is it the negative consequence? Maybe it's like we eat 100 nuggets, and if we don't finish it in time, well, guess what? Then, we have some negative punishment, such as slime over our head. I'm gonna keep it fairly basic here. That could be a thing, because again, let's say there is no negative consequence here, or no stake, or no positive outcome that is possible here. And why would I feel a sense of urgency? Because, okay, there's a time limit, there's these things, but if you fail, it's meaningless. That's the reason why you always need something at stake. Now, here's the thing about a stake though, is that urgency is stronger typically with negative consequences. If I say that, hey, if you don't make it, you get slimed. Well, that's a negative consequence. Oh no, there's some harm being done. But a positive consequence typically only works when I already feel care for that character, or I personally as a viewer value the outcome. So for example, if somebody wins $1 million, why do I care about a person winning $1 million for a nugget eating competition? Well, if I like that person and that person is really nice, then sure, I start caring about it because I want to see that person win it. But if I don't like this person, then the sense of urgency isn't really gonna come home. Or maybe it's the sense of urgency because I really like seeing this person lose that one. But there needs to be a character relationship between the viewer and the character that they're observing in order to make this work through this one. So make sure to always understand that the value of a negative consequence is stronger for most people than the value that you get of a positive reward for the person going through this one, unless there is character care. So those were some techniques that you could be using if you want to improve your retention or have some more advanced ways to make people watch for longer. If you like this type of content, make sure to let me know in the comments. And I want to thank you, and I wish you the best of luck with your own content if you're a content creator.